All right, so let's start today with the SUSE QE Tools Workshop. Last week we had an talk about the recent performance improvements in wait screen change and wait still screen, and also we have discussed some ideas and topics how that could be incorporated in recording test modules. This week we have an open conversation planned, so free choice of topic, and the next week we will have a SUSE QE Tools roadmap presentation at the beginning of October. So with that, open conversation, meaning that we don't have anything prepared, and this is a round where we can discuss certain questions or something that's on your mind for longer. Anybody has a specific question right now?
I can start with a question. It's not actually a tools question, but something I would be interested.
Sure.
So in openQA, OpenSUSE org, we have Alp now installed, and it's completely red for quite some time. And I've seen some Slack comments where it said, we need some repos or whatever. Does anybody know anything about this? And just can give me some background information? Oh, Phoenix is there. Maybe he can do that. Felix.
Good morning.
Good morning, Felix.
Hi, Felix. We just brought up the question regarding Alp tests in O3. I think also a good idea to show that. So we have the Alp group in here. And as we see that the results are like, well, okay, so, tests work, but there are no test results which are green. And we can see that we have cockpit service and there are bugs linked to that, which are open. So maybe that is the reason why we can't proceed here. Felix, maybe you know some more details?
I know that Pavel and Jose were working on the Alp test, but Pavel is on squad rotation, Jose is on parental leave, and at 10 or at 11 today we have a meeting on how to advance on this one. So I can tell you more about that after that meeting.
Okay, that's also actually good information, because I was just saying, I follow your Slack channel. I have seen that Peter Czerwinka has raised the issue, because if you go back to the only if you go one step back, you can see that LTP is enabled, but it's not running. It's skipped. It's skipped now for 3 days. And I know that Peter is waiting for something. And I know that there is a bug about repos. I was a little bit curious. What does it mean? Yeah.
So Alp default is failing, and that's a dependency of install LTP, which is then used to conduct the actual LTP test. And for that one, the tickets here, there are references from yesterday. So Martin Lewiska added these references yesterday. So, it's pretty recent. And also these both reports are from yesterday. So that cockpit is missing bootable images. So let me see. Cockpit not found in package names.
Marita, can you give me 2 sentences on the context on why you are asking?
Just out of curiosity. I just want to know. I mean, I'm following an Alp quite closely, as a lot of people I think are doing, and I just want to know what's going on and why. I mean, just some background information. Nothing to worry, and I'm just interested.
Yep, thanks.
I mean, the prototype came out yesterday, and now we start with the December prototype, so we have October, November, and half of December to address stuff, to work on things. I was just curious. But actually, it's also a good question. Who will be in charge? Because Jose will be away for 2 months, right?
We will know after today.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. That's all.
Right. I would assume that we would have something like a group responsible. But anyway, we can see that, the tests are able to boot an image, and that's already quite some progress. So, we have a boot entry and we can boot the platform, and I think that's the relevant part for the prototype, because you can actually use that system up to the point where depending on what packages are available, jobs could be done.
Okay, yeah, sure.
And we can actually see, oh, there's actually much more working than I would have expected. So, it's only the cockpit service which is not installable and errors in the journal, but, the rest is also fully covered with tests like transactional updates, smoke test.
Yeah, but this there's the micro tests that have been enabled, I don't know, 2 months ago or so. Yeah, but yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Just a prototype, so we're all fine.
Good.
Oh, okay, thank you. So anyone else with other questions? Go ahead.
Right. Any other points or just topics you would like to discuss or coordinate? Yes. There is cockpit. Oh, looks good. I have a question then to the audience. So, how do you all see currently the situation and the stability of openQA tests, be it in general or regarding specific instances? How's your feeling? What's your observation? Yeah, Marita, you're gone.
Okay, it's me again. So actually, about stability, I know that we have 3 ARM workers which are not working, and we have 2 ARM workers which have not been ever enabled. I just want to give you a heads up that I know that Andreas Ferber, the ARM project manager, and Jan, they are kind of, they got how to say. I know that they discussed this week and last week, and I think they have raised also a red flag to the release managers, just to give you information. So expect more discussions here. But I guess the situation is the same for years now, right? Or since months, no progress.
Let's say it's not as bad regarding the actual current situation. It's more like that the risk increases with time a lot because we are relying very much on individual machines, which, I mean, they are unstable, as in we repeatedly reboot them, but this is all automatic. So we have quite a lot of experience by now how to handle these unstable machines. So for us, they're actually not that big of a hassle, which is a cool thing. But yeah, we are not able to come up with proper replacements. And for this, I would like to show you the picture. Actually, it doesn't look that unstable anymore. So that's interesting. Just taking a look at one of 3 machines. So what you see here is a simple monitoring graph showing if the machine is regarded as online or not. And you can see, okay, these minor dips where maybe an individual ping was lost. I wouldn't be too concerned about that. Whenever you see these dashed lines, this is when an alert was raised and then automatically handled. So what happens, let me show you this one example here. What happens is that on the 20th of September on 1 o'clock in the morning, the machine didn't respond anymore. And, it's the case of there's nothing printed even on the serial terminal, nothing recorded in any kind of crash report. So completely dead. And then we need to either over IPMI, we can reboot the machine, or we go with multiple retries on multiple levels. We power cycle the complete hardware block, including IPMI, the BMC, and then we recover the machine. And that sometimes, like in this case, it actually took 4 hours, but I think that was still automatically handled. The normal case is like this, that a machine is detected as offline. That was at 8:50. And then on 9:05, so 15 minutes later, the machine was up again and able to execute openQA test. And yeah, it works like that. We have machines which were intended as replacement, and they turned out to be not really stable. I also talked to the OBS team, by the way, or BuildOps team, if if they would be interested in some kind of swap of systems, if they are better able to handle with such system. But of course, they're also running a virtualized workload, and they are saying like they have enough of unstable machines themselves. So also for them, it's continuous work to detect problems and play around with, going back to a certain kernel version, trying to boot different image, trying different kernel settings, tweaking firmware settings. And in some cases, they were also not fully successful. So they are in a similar situation than we are, just on maybe like 5 times more machines.
Well, that's a little sobering.
Yeah, we still have some ideas. I mean, I'm optimistic that what we can learn from that in the end is that we can better qualify what are the actual requirements on hardware, so that we can really say like, okay, if these requirements are fulfilled, then you're able to execute stable openQA tests. Because it feels right now that, of course, we have certain system requirements, but the requirements are more like, okay, you can start a virtual machine and you have enough memory, then you should be fine. But in the end, it turns out if you want to prevent certain problems like losing characters when typing over VNC protocol, there are additional requirements and we can't really pinpoint them. So far, we were only able to say, run the actual production workload on specific machines, and then afterwards find out what the fail rate is. And if it's significantly higher, like in the case of the machines which we call ARM4 and ARM5, then we say like, okay, they are not up for use in production, at least not with the current system configuration and setting. Okay. So what from you guys, who else would like to share how you see the current situation regarding openQA tests? Are we good? Are there some problems that you think are not given enough care, or would you say that yeah, we do have some problems? Obviously, we always do, but we have some plan to cover those, or we have some kind of feasible workaround. How is it for you? If you don't have individual responses on that, what we can do, actually, let me take a look on, because we started with looking at the internal monitoring system, and we can take a look together. For example, what we can see is that the availability of openQA is 98.6%, which is actually much higher than I would target. So I would target something like 3 times 9, meaning 99.9% for the availability of openQA SUSE QE as a whole. The main reasons were here problems with kernel regressions, and that we don't have automatic handover of workload to other machines in such cases, and also unavailabilities of server rooms due to climate control issues in server rooms. Let me take a look at Web UI summary. Look some days back, over the last week. What we can see that the response time of the web service has sometimes where it's going really high. That's depending on mostly access of external services following the system while the system had scheduled a bunch of new jobs, and they always happen in bulk, something like 2,000 openQA jobs scheduled for sleep maintenance purposes. And we can see the CPU load going high, but there are no alarming levels, and also there is no saturation happening. File system usage is sane. We are always on a good level there. Memory usage is also not nearing any limits. We had a problem in the past months with the number of database connections at the same time. Now this is turning data too much. Okay, loaded. So we can see the open database connections and that they are also staying aligned. What we do see is that sometimes we have this really high numbers in the queries conducted. This you see is spikes.
Yeah.
And for some time we managed to not have any spikes. So maybe there's something to look into if we have again some kind of problematic situation, or if we can avoid that. I mean, the system stays responsive, but the situation when this was turning into making the openQA web UI completely unresponsive was when this was going in a range of 60 million, so only 3 times as high. Then what we have is the OSD status overview. And what we see here is that we have problems with our PC workers. So we have QA Power 8.5 and QA Power 8.4, which are both in, let's say, in investigation mode. So we have, since the upgrade to Leap 15.4 and also the according kernel upgrade, we have also problems here that systems are sometimes crashing. And this is why, sometimes machines are not available. Right now it's this machine, maybe because we installed yesterday the most recent kernel version and for investigation purposes, and that shows problem. For Malbec, it's physically disconnected from power so far because it's running in a section of the data center which was powered off in Nuremberg. So there are also plans ongoing to bring that machine back. But yeah, Marita?
Where is the red current? It's not visible here, right? Or black current? We have also black current, right?
Yes, both are, let's say, on the second level because they are not openQA workers. They are machines which are connected to individual instances for bare metal testing. So imagine that behind one of these workers, it's either openQA worker 2 or Grenache 1, which is not running the VMs themselves, but connecting to the bare metal machines. There's like about 20 bare metal testing machines.
Yeah, and Grenache is a jump host, right?
Yeah, or openQA worker 2, because as remember also Grenache 1 was switched off for some time, and then the workload was shifted to openQA worker 2. There are plans that's actually within the core team to move back the worker instance from openQA worker 2 to Grenache 1. This might be connected to some cases of unstable connections also to the bare metal testing machine. So, tests fail and it looks like some unstable connection, but there are also more hosts involved. So I think it's good if I can show that now. We have in monitoring, we have this a new graph for packet loss between worker hosts and other hosts. And you can see that this is currently alerting because QA power 8.5 is not reachable. And we can see that sometimes we have a packet loss. In particular, the Power PC machines are showing problems sometimes in connection. So the network seems to be less stable in this regard. And also there are cases like, for example, here. So this looks fine that currently we are trying to access this SUSE QE as well as download OpenSUSE.org, a proxy SSC, and QANet, the central DHCP DNS server, as well as the S390 net instances. So there can also be problems in it sometimes. Or let's put it like this: if you see problems, then actually we can look back to this graph and see, does that also link to something that the monitoring has caught. And then what else? Then there's the job age dashboard, which shows this is showing green, meaning that in general, when tests are scheduled, then they are picked up for execution within a reasonable time. So the median value for the best case machine classes is 1 hour. It says 1 hour ago. It should just say 1 hour or less. Meaning that if any job is scheduled, then the median expectation is that within 1 hour, it's picked up by a worker and will be executed. Phoenix?
Why are there those, sorry, I don't know the English word, the Sägezahnmuster?
Yeah. So, for example, if we take a look at this job age by machine class, the job age is simply the age of scheduled jobs. And as soon as a job shows up in the scheduled table, then it will stay there until it is picked up, until it can be assigned to a worker matching the according class. And if it takes very long, like in this case, where for S390 KVM SLE 12, it was taking multiple days for tests to be picked up, then we can see that increase. As soon as the jobs are either picked up by the workers, or if they are actually removed or cancelled, then it goes down to 0. So the threshold on which we would alert is something like a horizontal line to say if the job age exceeds a certain level. So 166 hours, meaning multiple days that jobs could not be executed of this specific machine class. All the others seem to be fine, and then some other machine class was making a problem. It's a bit hard to read because there's a lot of data in here. But for example, here it was AH64 virt.io that was being actually AH64. Interesting to see. I don't know why the generic AH64 showed up here. But for example, for AH64 virt.io, which I also saw in here, that I could understand because that means that the worker class, which was only having a single machine, was not able to pick up the job, mostly because that single machine is not available for whatever reason. Honestly, I would also look for better representations if I would have them. Yeah. So for example, what we see here is that's the percentile, the max value, meaning like the worst cases, okay, like the end of the queue, because we have different expectations for the different classes. Let's say a normal QEMU x86-64, which takes, let's say, 80% of the workload or maybe 90% of the workload, should be able to finish much quicker than very specific special machine classes. And this one here is the showing the max value. So this is like the worst case, meaning that at least one worker class was not able to satisfy the demand within course of multiple hours. And you see the alerting level here. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Richard, go on.
Hello, Oliver. Can we check the specific worker class schedule time here? Because I hit some issues for the worker class as word dash then. For example, I try to reproduce some or rerun some tests. It may take several hours to pick
Yes.
up the test.
So we have SWORD Zen HVM and we have SWORD Zen PV, and we can which one, HVM or PV or both?
No, I think I passed here. I think it should be as worth just as worth there. His was worker class.
Zen. I thought we needed to distinguish between HVM and Zen PV. But yeah, okay. So we can check the specific case. You could write me afterwards. But what we can check first is that how long does it usually take for jobs to pick up? And we can see that sometimes the job age is increasing over time up to this peak here, which is 7 hours, meaning likely that at this time, when this ramp starts, a new build is triggered for a product which has multiple jobs triggered for this worker class. And then the first one, of course, should start immediately, but the last one is only picked up after nearly 8 hours, which of course is quite long waiting time.
Yeah, cool. So in this case, we can consider to add more worker class here, correct?
I cannot easily answer that because that means that we need the according hardware resources, which would also be booked specifically for Zen. So, you know, in all cases which are not just the normal QEMU worker classes, it's more tricky. So for QEMU, we can just add one more host, and then that helps to reduce the worker class. Of course, other things which help is, of course, optimize the test cases, try to rethink the structure, because maybe sometimes the resources are free, but the complete structure is blocked by, let's come up with an example. For example, if all SWORD Zen HVM tests would depend on a single test to create the original installation, you know, multi-machine test, where you say, I have a single create job and that one takes 10 hours and all the others can only come afterwards, then of course, all the jobs except for the one need to wait for 10 hours, even though there are free resources.
Yeah, good.
Okay, then I would like to show openQA jobs test. And what we see here is the actual number of jobs that are triggered, and it can also help us to answer some questions which we mentioned in before. Because also here we have the jobs running by group, running by worker, and such. Very generic and simple graph is this one, which shows that during the last 2 days, you can see this is when a big amount of tests was triggered. So, you know, something like a new build of SLE 15 in development, and a new trigger for SLE maintenance aggregate tests may trigger such spikes as in more than 1,000 tests, and then we work down this peak until we reach a near zero. What we can see in green is the running job, so we can see that we are maxing out at 243 jobs, meaning that 243 jobs can run in parallel on openQA SUSE. And then there's some times where it goes down to 30, but there are hardly ever any times where it would be near zero, actually, like only over something like longer vacation periods reaching a zero. Then we are also monitoring the number of incomplete jobs and the overall job fail ratio. And what can also be interesting to look at is the ratio of multi-machine tests by result. So we can see how the multi-machine tests end up. For a longer time, we had a big chunk of skipped and obsolete tests, which never had a chance to finish at all. So that's an improved. And then also, I mentioned that we singled out individual machines because of their higher fail ratio. And what we can take a look at here is that we can see that, for example, the most problematic one right now is the openQA Pi worker. So the Raspberry Pi tests are much more likely to fail compared to other tests. That might depend just on the test design, but you know, when there are certain tests which would never fully adjusted to be able to run successfully on Raspberry Pi. I don't know that. If we have machines which match the same worker class, then it's helpful to see if there's a significant change here. For example, openQA worker ARM4 and ARM5, they were always significantly more prone to fail tests than other jobs. This is why we singled them out. Okay. Some related questions to that? Or anything else you'd like to discuss? So, Guillaume, thanks for the question. When will it be available for openQA OpenSUSE.org? So maybe you can remind me, what was we have this, we have metrics. So there is a Grafana instance for OpenSUSE. And that one was openQA data. How am I able to? Yeah. So at least we have this information about the scheduled and the running jobs, as well as the separation by architecture and group and worker. In theory, all of these Grafana dashboards are available in a GitHub repo in also the install states. So I currently have no plans to gather these metrics and supply them to this instance, but in theory it's possible. So we have the Telegraph configuration, which provides all the data, and then we have all
that
the
is the easy part, right? Providing the data. You can basically share the configuration or copy that anyway, but using the dashboards, there's no easy way to reuse them because the JSON contains IDs for everything. If you actually generate it.
Yeah, but that's fine. I mean, if you would want to use the complete dashboard, then you can just use that, right? The only thing which wouldn't match right now that sometimes it's hard code. Okay, so I tried to, template that, but maybe it's just some cosmetic impact of that, because in the end, the data must be provided by a Telegraph instance, which would be possible. So yeah, I don't have any plans to do that, but a lot of stuff is available in public, so someone might want to look into that in their free time. Good.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Anything else? Anything different? Okay, fine. So yeah, Felix?
It's very much not even half-baked idea, but I thought that I had recently that fits actually very well in here. So one of the do you know the old saying from NASA? In God we trust. Everyone else provides data. So one of the core issues here is the old issue of the sporadic test issues. And it's very easy to always say this is a sporadic test issue, this is a sporadic test issue, blah blah. So one of the I had three things that came into my mind, and I don't know if this is actually something that we should advance. So the main thing, what I think would be beneficial for us is to kind of get the sporadic test issues out of the or let's say to distill the sporadic test issues that occur multiple times, the ones that require action. So this raises the question, how can we identify them? And one of the things that I am missing in openQA that I think is kind of helpful would be to mark the restarted jobs and to get an overview about which jobs have been restarted with exactly the same settings and succeeded in the second run or in the third run.
Okay.
Because this is kind of one of the tools that we could use then in order to identify sporadic issues that are recurring. And this maybe helps us to distinguish or to increase the signal to noise ratio and create some meaningful or some actionable items to work on those issues. Because otherwise the sporadic issues will always become this gray noise where we don't see actual meaningful items or actionable items.
Yeah, good point. We have something there regarding detection of sporadic issues and also some plans. So I would like to present that. So first, do you know the in openQA investigate jobs?
Yes.
Okay, so we have
investigation tab or the Geeko test?
Right, I mean the specific jobs that are triggered for investigation. So the second kind. For example, this job, it's extra tests on KDE investigate retry. This one was not created by posting an ISO, so it's not part of, let's say, production validation builds, but it's a second layer investigation jobs, which are automatically triggered. They don't appear in any job group, and you can find them, of course, in the list of finished jobs. But other than that, they are only referenced from the openQA investigate origin. So we can go back to.
How do you make such jobs?
Those jobs are triggered by a script which is called openQA. Okay, let me look it up so that I don't get that right.
It does not have an easy name.
openQA investigate. So it is an easy name. openQA investigate. So openQA investigate from the auth scripts repository triggers those tests. Okay. And what we do is the first one is a very simple retry, which would basically be equivalent to one cloning that job within the instance and deleting the reference to the group and to the build. And what we see is if this job fails, then it's very likely that we do not have a sporadic issue. This is also why already we provide a second comment where we say, depending on those results from above, this is likely not a sporadic issue. Okay. And the next step that we plan to do, so a feature request that I requested, is to say the inverse, to give a clear indication to say, okay, in cases where the retry job passes, we write back to the original job like, hey, if I just retry, the job passes. This is a sporadic issue, and then one can treat it as such. Does that fit into the idea that you have?
It's kind of the first step. It's the automatic retry,
yes.
But we need a tool in order to visualize the things, because going into every individual failed test and then looking at the comment of deco test and looking at the test results of this one doesn't scale on the level on which we would need it.
Yeah. So for example, here we have one example where the retry job, so the original job, other DE Mate, failed. The retry job passed. If we go back to the last good test, that also fails. And if we go back to the last good builds, that passes. If we go back to last good test and build, that also fails. So for me, that's an indication why, okay, that's a clear sporadic issue, because, you know, it's not really relevant on what parameters you change. Sometimes it passes, sometimes it fails, right? And if we take a look into the job that the module that actually failed, it's a shutdown module, and we don't find it here in the history. So maybe it is a sporadic issue that just appeared here, but it might be a sporadic issue which would show up in similar ways in other scenarios, and that's what we cannot easily see from here. So there we would need to make that link to other scenarios and such, right? And for that we actually have an interesting result from our GSOC project, which is investigating the log files and looking for similarities. And if you're interested in that, let me take a look. Where can I find the... Oh yeah, here. There's a link to this issue, and there I would like to find a blog article read with you. Would be this one. So maybe this also gives you an idea what this is doing. It's able to parse the order-ins log file from different failing tests and trying to identify if there are same or similar errors. Maybe that also helps. But you know, it's only one point in that direction. Phoenix, you said it would be the first step. So how would you say we could continue from here?
That's the difficult question. There are many ways what could explore, but there is not a definite answer. One idea that I still like is to have the ability to add tags to test runs and then be able to filter test run for this one. So for instance, Gecko test could tag the ones that are passing on second try, and
Yep.
this gives us the ability to search for them, or maybe the ability to search for certain comments that can act as tags. And from there onwards, it requires human intervention in order to distill recurring issues that can actually be resolved or that. But the visualization part of distilling the tests that are passing on a second or third test runs is the missing part. And we are
Right.
kind of already halfway there.
Okay, so so what we can do is we can look for jobs which have a certain comment, like, might not be a computer readable label, but we can just look for that text string because we know that it will appear exactly like that.
You're right, that works, yeah.
So we could look up all tests like that and then represent in a way as the user would require. Honestly,
and we can use labels here, right? We could simply change that and use a label and
exactly.
make that easy to scan.
Exactly. But it would only be one.
We're always free to come up with new labels, right? OpenQA doesn't, require you to use only defined ones.
Of course, right. So anybody can define a label by use, right? So we could do that, but I think it would only that doesn't make that much of a difference because we can get by searching for that string. And of course, we can improve that solution with a label. The question is, can we find some kind of human readable representation which serves the needs of everybody, or do we say that we shouldn't even try because people can get access to the database and then select on their own how they want that to be represented? We could try with the first. The problem is that sometimes that you're getting lost in a certain direction because then somebody says like, yeah, the table is cool, but could you render it from a different direction, like by product or by architecture or by whatever and such.
By flavor, Ollie, by flavor. This is most relevant on a squad level, and people would need to filter it out by flavor. I don't want to look at all the sporadic issues. I want to look at the sporadic issues of the jobs that I am interested in.
Yeah. You tell me by flavor, but I already know 5 other people which know, which tell me like they only want to know it by architecture or such, right? Yeah. So I understand that the needs are just differing, and we cannot fulfill all use cases easily.
The message was not, I want to have that specific use case. The message is we likely need a feature to be able to select by individual characteristics, whatever they are. So just searching for the tag or however you want to call it in the comment fields will not be sufficient. You also would need a second step where you are able to filter them out by architecture, flavor, time, state of the moon, food preference of the person at the door, whatever.
Exactly. And this is what I'm commonly doing by database filters. And of course, I showed you here in before a little bit what we tried to do. For example, here, this ratio of failed tests. And here we have it filtered by worker host. And of course, you could say we want to have that by flavor, by architecture, by worker class, by test suite, by machine selection, by service pack of the product that you're testing. But preparing that all periodically every single time and putting that into the monitoring system in Flux and Grafana is also, a bit a strain on the system. So, but this is why I have another idea, which is actually Metabase. If you don't know Metabase, It's a really cool project where you can prepare certain filters and queries which turn into SQL, and then you can visualize them accordingly. Let me see. For example, if you want to know about openQA jobs, then here you have a list of openQA jobs, and then you can select different visualizations. And what I wanted to show you is where do I find the already prepared visualizations? Like here, which test suits fail the most on OSD? For example, here you see that QAM incident install is the most failing test suite by numbers. Okay. And another one would be looking into modules. So that's querying the database right now. I don't know how long it usually takes. I think less than a minute, so I think we can wait. And it would tell you which module is the one failing most often. It doesn't tell you about sporadic, but I think you get the idea of what one could do. So that would be one thing. And the other thing, what I'm looking for is to having something like specific messages provided by bot, where the bot tells you like, hey, you are looking at a sporadic issue. So, don't lose time trying to find out if that is a product regression from the latest build or something, because very likely it isn't, right? So yeah, here you see which openQA test modes fail most often, and you see Firefox, and after that Tomcat. So if you want to reduce the number of false positives, I guess you really need to start with Firefox.
Can you just dump the link in the chat here?
Sure. I don't know who has access to that. Try it out, and then please, you can reach out to me, or actually try to reach out to members of the maintenance department, because they provide the service, the server. It's just this one query which I have conducted there. And rather, before building all these visualizations into openQA, because I think we are not able to do it in the quality as Metabase is doing, then rather use tools which already do that. What they do is they access the database and they provide you something fancy on top.
Well, I suspect from the openQA side, you probably want something else, right? Like, for instance, here you have the details in context if you're looking at a particular test module.
Yes, of course. So I would like if we can give some messages, like, why not, if we see that, provide something that on request could be provided that says more details or more statistics about failures of this job module. So that would be something deeply distilled and prepared, and that's something that we could provide within openQA. Okay, cool. So I guess, again, we have managed to cover nearly a complete hour with what I find quite interesting discussions and topics. So thank you all for your contributions. Let's stop it here. I will be around for some minutes after this meeting if you still like to continue to chat or have some questions. Other than that, I welcome you again back next week when we will have the roadmap presentation in 2022 October. Thank you and see you.